Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Pearson. 2 weeks ago, the crop fields up in northwestern Iowa were looking excellent. Since then, it has been a rough 2 weeks. Now they are under record amounts of floodwater. Joining us now to talk about the situation is Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Naig. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Mike. Always great to catch up.
Fill us in on the impact of these floodwaters in northwest Iowa, Mr. Secretary. How many acres have been impacted? How many people? What can you tell us?
It's been really has been a tough couple of weeks here. Significant amount of rain. There are places in the state, the northwest corner in particular, that essentially got a whole summer's worth of rainfall in about a 24 to 48 hour period. We've seen flooding that folks would say is exceeds what they saw in 1993, which is always sort of out there as the high water mark, so to speak. And so I did have a chance to travel up to the far northwest corner of the state and work back to central Iowa over the last couple of days. You have significant damage to homes and businesses in a few communities, Spencer, Rock Valley, Haywarden, just to name a few, but there are others. And then also out in the ag landscape, of course, you've got the impact of damage to homes and structures because of the fast moving water. But then as I traveled further beyond those areas, of course, what we have is just saturated soil. We had one of the wettest springs on record. Now we've put more rain on top of that. And so we are seeing wet spots all across the corner of the state. Of course, hard to say exactly what that crop impact is. How long does the water sit? That'll come into focus here in the next couple of weeks, but it builds on an already challenging spring for folks in that part of the state, talking prevent plant, lots of replanting, added more water when we just didn't need it.
Absolutely, Mike. And of course, that water's now making its way down the Missouri River. Folks in Iowa, Nebraska will be dealing with it as it moves into Missouri. But northwest Iowa, in addition to being great cropland in the state of Iowa, it is also very livestock heavy. Mike, have you seen many impacts to livestock operations from this flooding? Have there been evacuations or rescues that you're aware of?
We have, and unfortunately there are some losses because of, again, you're talking about massive amounts of water that flowed through, rushed through a wall of water that hit some facilities, impacting a lot of cattle operations in particular. But we are hearing about, as we get through the summer, you've got some lagoons and pits and those types of things that took on a lot of water, and so that'll have to be dealt with. But I would say that maybe the most pressing thing that is impacting livestock producers across that corner of the state today and over the last few days is washed out roads, washed out bridges, just flat out trying to get feed or move animals, or just getting from point A to point B across the rural parts of our counties. Very, very challenging, having to drive many miles out of the way, or maybe just find that one or two bridge crossings that are still in place to literally get across anywhere up in northwest Iowa. So those are the day-to-day type of things that folks are having to struggle with right now. And of course, that's a long road to rebuild all that infrastructure.
Absolutely won't be overnight. Mike, northwest Iowa, of course, livestock production, dairy production. Iowa has also been grappling with the outbreak of HPAI in the dairy herd. I understand IDAL is looking to put some new requirements on moving dairy cattle here July 1st. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, we are. We're unfortunately, here we are with both high-path avian influenza cases being detected in dairy and in poultry. I say all the time that we don't get to just treat this as a dairy issue only in the state of Iowa because we are number one in egg production, because we have significant turkey production. We have to treat this as a whole agriculture, all agriculture issue. The same virus, the same even strain of the virus is affecting different species very, very differently. So we have to take that into account. We're putting some exhibition requirements in place that folks will have to do some testing before they can go to the county fair or the state fair. We want folks to be able to show, but we need to do it safely.
Absolutely. Do it safely. Let's keep this virus as contained as possible as we look to the future. Mike Naig, Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Iowa, thank you so much for joining us this week and filling us in on the challenges in your state.
You bet.
Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Brian, thanks for joining us this week.
Always great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Lots of conversation today focused on the acreage report, stocks report from yesterday, Brian. But my question to you is, those numbers reported early June, are they still relevant after all this flooding?
Right, so I think we need to have a kind of an understanding of how the report works in general, because this is not what was planted as of June 1. This is still what was planted and still intended to be planted. So when you look at the crop progress and our planting progress numbers, the planting progress continued to go higher from June 1 moving forward. And so then there's also the conversation going back to the March report of, well, there were 6 million principal crop acres that weren't there, and that's why that report was bullish. So when you think about that and look at where the price levels were, January straight down into February, the producer was not in a good mood. Did they intend on planting the acres that actually went in the ground? So from February, we go back up while the planters are in the field, we're approaching $5 corn. If extra acres were going to be put in, input costs came down substantially from where they were in fall. So this is not just a simple what was in the ground as of June 1. This is a more complicated number than that. But the number that we get is what we have to deal with, and it's what the USDA is going to be using on the July WASDE report.
Absolutely. And now that that's behind us, even with the questions in how these numbers will shake out longer term, Brian, what's the next focus for the market? Are we still looking at North American weather predominantly this season?
Well, North American weather is still going to be extremely important. We're going to be pollinating corn very soon. And so absolutely the weather during pollination is going to have an extremely significant impact on the overall yield potential that we have. Now we do, of course, need to finish the crop later, but then we're going to be going into pod fill season for soybeans. So weather is still going to be a major focus, but we have to think about where demand is, right? China has not bought a single bushel of new crop soybeans up to this point. Normally by this time of the year, they're buying ahead for the new marketing year. Maybe they've bought 500,000 tons, 1 million. Maybe in some of the previous years, it's been as much as 3 million. So the fact that they haven't bought any, now that's going to make the USDA's assumptions of export demand for soybeans look a little lofty. And as we start doing pace analysis come fall, the USDA may need to bring those numbers back down, thereby adding additional bushels to the balance sheet.
So we could see soybean exports continue to decline. Brian, is there the possibility that we're going to see corn exports continue to decline here as Brazil's crop comes out of the fields?
Brazil's crop, Argentina's crop, harvest is moving along quickly. That puts their crop available to the world marketplace a little bit sooner than normal. So could that impact kind of the late marketing year exports? Absolutely. And right now, the bottom line for the futures and the directions, the trend is down. And so that needs to have something change it, and we haven't had that yet.
Brian, one of the things that we know drives or at least can impact exports is the value of the U.S. dollar. We've seen it climbing here over the past several months. Do you anticipate the U.S. dollar to have continued strength?
Well, the trend is higher there. They've been buying it all month of June. A lot of times we do see a shift in currencies when we get to the end of a quarter. So that'll be something to watch. Does the dollar accelerate as we get into the new quarter? Or do we see the trend change a little bit? And if it does, that could help things out. But also the Brazilian real has been weak all of June. So you have that the dollar goes up, the real goes down, and that combination is not good for U.S. agricultural exports.
Basically, it's making Brazilian products very cheap on the global stage, correct, compared to ours?
And they've got a lot of it, which also makes their product cheap.
Lots to talk about. We'll be back with more from Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. This week, we're talking markets with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. And Brian, just before you went to break, we mentioned that China has not been buying American soybeans quite as much this year. But I've heard a lot of optimism about the domestic crush making up for that lack of exports. Is that where you see this thing going?
That optimism for domestic crush really came from the idea that we were going to have this big build out of the renewable diesel initiative. And that initiative is still in place, but the problem is that we are not using the type of oils that we thought we were going to use. So we've had used cooking oil from China become a big part of the conversation. Recently, it's used cooking oil from Brazil becoming part of the conversation. So yes, we're going to build out this renewable diesel initiative, but are we going to be using the oil that we thought we were going to? I think a year and a half ago, the conversation was, wow, we need all of these bean acres to meet this demand. That has not been the case.
Okay, so we're going to be watching to see what those imports do, really to see if that continues to drive the crush here domestically.
Right, we keep using this used cooking oil from all over the world. We are not going to need as much soybean oil as we thought.
If that's the case, Brian, what's the trend here for soybean prices as you look out to the fall?
So the trend in everything currently is down. And I think months ago we talked about 2014, and we could go all the way back to comparisons of 2010 to 2020 when we bottomed corn just above $3. We go 2011 highs, 2021 highs that are above $7. We pull back substantially. 2012 is a drought. 22 is the invasion of Ukraine. We get near $8 a bushel or above $8. Then 2013 and 2023 are transition years to a bear market. And here we are, 2014 and 2024 are full-blown bear market years. And so if we do follow the pattern of a decade ago, this corn market could see the hammer drop on it in the month of July, where we come out of the 4th of July, we gap lower, we go down further into the month, into August, eventually making lows in early fall. Probably when we find out the crop wasn't as big as we thought. Demand is stimulated at lower levels and then turn right back up into the end of the year.
All right, so that's corn and soybeans. You're looking at that time period from a decade ago. The wheat market, Brian, has been wild. Is that same analog year in place for wheat?
No, it's not 2014, it's 2009. So, and actually we have a branch office up in North Dakota. They said, okay, we want to find years where we have similar stocks to use and carryout numbers, and we found 2009 for wheat. Can you do some chart overlays of 2009 wheat versus 2024 wheat? All three varieties in 2009 bottomed in March, rallied into the end of May, just like we did this year, at the same price levels. All three varieties in June of 2009 broke all month long, and we just saw what wheat did the whole month of June. So if that pattern continues, you probably see a harvest low, maybe the first week of July, volatile 50-cent trading range up and down in the month of July, another leg lower in August as corn and soybeans are making their lows.
All right, so it's a bearish outlook for everybody. Brian, I got to find some optimism here. Let's turn over to the cattle market. Looked like we had a little move to the upside today. Is that optimism back in live cattle?
Right, so we've got box beef reaching extremely high levels. We've got record cash prices. My concern is, yes, box beef is very high, but what kind of sales are we doing? How many loads are we moving? We've sold the smallest amount of box beef loads since 2017, 7 years. Now, behaviors are changing. I asked my wife, why are we eating chicken all the time? I like chicken, love pork chops. I go to the local restaurants, pork chops are on special now, right? So I'm seeing a lot less beef on specials. And I think demand behaviors are going to change. And so what happens when you've got all these high-priced calves, these are record inputs, just like corn last fall, you better be protecting these high input costs.
Absolutely. A lot of risk out there on the table today. Brian Splitt, agmarket.net. As always, thanks for joining us and providing your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Greg Soulje now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, the weather never sleeps, and neither does Greg Soulje. He's dodging thunderstorms on vacation this week, but he still has a meteorological update for us. Greg, Pacific Northwest, what are you watching for in this next week?
Per usual, this time of the year across the Pacific Northwest, it's a pretty quiet weather pattern. The onshore flow and mostly northward into Canada keeps the weather pretty uneventful. And so let's check the weather maps and charts out. And the usual dryness-related issues beginning to show up, and heavier irrigation demands and runoff the Cascades into Washington State. Somewhat cooler air on the move across Big Sky Country, but as frontal boundaries really into the Dakotas, towards the Black Hills, and that low on the Canadian Prairie, kind of the signature, the start of the ridge riding or at least ring of fire thunderstorms out of the Dakotas. And unfortunately, they're going to take aim at sections of the western and northern Corn Belt with time. So that's the story through the middle part of the week. Late in the week, again, the high moves into the southern Canadian Prairie. And that's unusually cool air for some of those spring grain crops there. Otherwise, there's heat banked up across the Nebraska Panhandle. You try to mix the two and you come up more of these thunderstorm clusters, heavy and severe, and they'll propagate again into the western Corn Belt locales. Otherwise, pretty quiet across the interior west. Maybe a stray shower. Willamette Valley on northward in through the Pacific Northwest and Olympic Peninsula. Boy, the weather across the valleys of California and southwestern regions, a couple of days at least of 105, maybe 110 through the Imperial Valley on southward. But to the east, some remnant tropical moisture. The monsoon season is underway from New Mexico on northward, so some scattered showers and thunderstorms. The heat is expanding over the high plains and along with the drought west of Wichita into the Oklahoma Panhandle and West Texas country despite some recent rainfall. That's the story through the middle part of the week. Little change late in the week. storm clusters across the southwestern states. Could be flash flood potential there. Heat builds as far north as western Kansas. More storminess as well from the Nebraska area on eastward into the rest of the western Corn Belt, Mike.
Greg, northern Corn Belt growers would love to see a bit of a dry down. Do you have that in the forecast for next week?
You know, we get dry hours, dry days, but it's the fact that these storms recur and repeat over the same particular areas. And that's why we're in this world of hurt through eastern Nebraska, parts of Iowa, Minnesota, Sioux Empire region. And here comes the next boundary and storm clustered effect of rainfall across the Red River Valley of the North into the western Corn Belt areas of Iowa, heavy and severe warmth and humidity, southern Corn Belt. If you're even keeled in the soil moisture department, good crop growth and development. That's not the story, though, into parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, despite recent rainfall. Expanding dryness and drought there. We'll get a couple of thunderstorms in some of those eastern areas late in the week. Some dry time western sections, a bit of a cool off into the upper Midwest. Note the new storms getting going across the Dakotas and through Nebraska. Once again, later in the week, taking aim into areas of the western Corn Belt. So an active one as we head closer to this 4th of July holiday. Southern Plains, just basically hot and humid. The hot ridges parked there and some bits and pieces from California into the southeastern states, and probably a northward expansion into the eastern Corn Belt, maybe a couple of thunderstorms, desert southwest, and from Oklahoma sitting on northward. Little change as well, Mike, for the middle late parts of the week. Monsoon moisture in the southwest. Heat and humidity, a tough one on man and beast from Texas and Oklahoma on eastward.
Greg, that heat and humidity has been bad in the eastern part of the U.S. Does that continue into this next week?
Yeah, especially from the Ohio Valley south and east towards the Mid-Atlantic region, where we're seeing some worsening of drought conditions. I-70 corridor on southward. Start the week off with high pressure. Note the storms again, scattered but heavy and severe. The western Corn Belt by the late portion of the week. They're still there in a developing warm front, would you believe? Triple-digit readings south and west of Kansas City, mid-90s to the Ohio Valley. High pressure and control across the Mid-Atlantic region from the Virginia area on southward. Tell you what, the drought is becoming a story there in the days to come and the weeks to come. Meanwhile, over the southeastern states, pretty much par for the course weather, triple-digit readings, except for that tough one on man and beast and some stress on those row crops across the northern delta back into parts of Texas. Otherwise, a couple of thunderstorms in through areas of Florida on southward, expanding dryness and drought again into central and south Florida. Looky here, eastern Gulf of Mexico, tropics getting busy. Otherwise, lots of heat and humidity across the deep south and southeastern states. A couple of thunderstorms northward into sections of the Carolinas.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hi-Pro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Folks, Washington, D.C. continues to be a hive of activity as summer moves along. One of the top priorities for the House of Representatives is getting that next farm bill across the finish line. Joining us now for an update is Chairman of the House Ag Committee, Glenn G.T. Thompson, Republican from Pennsylvania. G.T., thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk about America's #1 industry, agriculture.
It is indeed. Congressman, we saw the House Ag Committee get their version of the Farm Bill voted out of committee. Since then, I'm sure you've been in conversations with the Senate. Fill us in. How does progress look since you've released yours?
I think it's been good. I'm optimistic and really positive. We moved the bill out. First of all, the bill is a great bipartisan bill. It was built in a tripartisan way. All members of the committee, quite frankly, of Congress, were welcome to the table. And the content of the bill reflects that. Ideas that were led by Democrats, by Republicans, and most of them that were done in a bipartisan way. I say tripartisan because we also had the voices of rural America. American agriculture was at the table on this bill. So this is the farm bill that America needs. And since that time, some real positive developments. We've Senator John Bozeman, the ranking member in the Senate Agriculture Committee, he released his outline of what he wants to see within a farm bill, and it lined up really well with the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024, which is the bill that we passed with some bipartisan votes out of committee. And since just other good things. We've added at least 3 additional Republicans, special elections since that time. So it's 3 more votes that I feel pretty positive with another special election that will be resolved here and be joining us in just a couple weeks. So some really positive things that have been occurring. I've reached out to Senator Stabenow, looking forward to sitting down with her. Really need her to be able to, to take some initiative and, put her outline into legislative text so that we have, we have legislative text in both chambers.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of both chambers, we have not yet seen a full vote in the House. Of course, that's understandable. But as you look out, given the calendar, GT, of the year ahead, do you think we might see a full vote in the House here before too long? Well,
I would love to see it sooner than later. Now, we are, one of the things that's holding us back is really for the Congressional Budget Office to finish its job. They've been working with due diligence to, looking at the scoring of the bill and, quite frankly, looking at, giving us some realistic numbers that we can use as pay-fors. And I feel like we're getting closer. They have certainly given us some good news during just the past week or so, but it's going to take them a couple weeks to finish this job. And we are dependent upon that final score and quite frankly their calculations. But I see positive signs with that. We build a farm bill that America needs, and that means we focused on that input from farmers and ranchers and foresters, key stakeholders within rural America and America's #1 industry of agriculture. And some of that involves some new spending. Now, there won't be any new taxes. We're not going to add to the debt. We're doing this in a responsible way. We need to fund this within the jurisdiction of the Agriculture Committee. And I think I've got a good plan for that. So, and the Congressional Budget Office is a part of that. So we need them to be able to finish their job.
All right. Hopefully they can keep working, making progress on what this bill could cost us. But GT, I understand recently you were named the Holstein Association's Distinguished Leader of the Year. Congratulations. Of course, you do have a deep background in the dairy industry. So specifically with this farm bill, are there any dairy priorities that you're really excited or would like to see make it across the finish line?
Absolutely. As the #1 supporter of dairy, and most of that's because there's milk that runs through my veins coming from a long line of dairy farmers. There's a lot of things that I'm very proud of that will be very effective for the dairy industry. Starting with, I've gotten a waiver from the Dr. Fox, who is the chair of the Education and Workforce Committee, to attach my bill that passed out of the Education Workforce Committee. Actually passed off the House floor with 331 votes, and that's whole milk for healthy kids. And that would restore a market that we lost back in 2010 just because of bad information and bad science. It would make it it would restore the option for kids in our public schools to be able to have access to whole milk and flavor. That'll be huge for the health of the kids, but also for the financial health of the dairy industry in our rural communities that suffered whenever that was demonized in 2010.
Absolutely.
We've also, as we've seen a collapse of the dairy industry, when you lose a dairy farm, the ones surrounding it, the survivors, tend to get a little bigger. So our bill increases the amount of pounds to 6 million pounds that can be insured under the dairy margin coverage. We modernize the cost data. We bring that, instead of something that's 12 or 14 years old, we use more realistic, more recent data in terms of feed cost. We have some dairy incentive programs that we build into the nutrition program. There's a lot that I think will do well for the dairy industry.
There's a lot to watch as this summer moves along. Chairman of the House Ag Committee, Glenn G.T. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us this week and filling us in on the progress that is being made in D.C.
Mike, thank you so much. It's always an honor and a blessing to spend time with you.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Nutrien Ag Solutions recently had the opportunity to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as part of their annual Investor Day event. Jeff Tarsi, Executive Vice President and President of Global Retail at Nutrien, joins us now for an update on that event. Jeff, what can you tell us about Nutrien's priorities as they look to the future?
Yeah, sure. We are very excited about our future and also the priorities that we're focusing on. We feel like there's no other company that's more greatly positioned than we are in the field of agriculture. And at the same time that, we maintain very positive outcomes and we've maintained positive outcomes for our shareholders. More importantly, we continue to deliver tools and services that improve the financial and environmental performance of our customers. And if you look at us across the value chain, we're the largest ag retailer globally. We service approximately 600,000 growers out of 2,000 farm centers, and this is all enabled by the trusted relationship that our 4,000 crop consultants have with these 600,000 customers.
One of the topics brought up a lot during the Investor Day meetings were the investments being made in bionutritional technology and biostimulants for plants. Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about what those technologies are?
We've been in this business for some time, and over the last 5 years, we've invested about $500 million in this space. We think it's one of the real growth stories of agriculture going forward. A lot of excitement there. They're natural products. They're formed from pathogens in the soil in most cases, and they're very complementary to NP and K. And, as I said in our Investor Day, what makes us so excited about these products, first and foremost, they work. And they're new discoveries. And I think that we're going to see a lot of change in agriculture around this platform going forward.
Well, I think you're right, Jeff. One of the concerns I hear in the countryside are falling commodity prices, rising interest rates, squeezing that margin for farmers. How does Nutrien's strategy work in this kind of market?
Rising interest rates puts a lot of pressure at every segment of the industry. It puts it's pressure on the growers because it's an increased cost of production in it. And so our job, and listen, I've been in this business 40 years, and there's been a rare exception that there were years without challenges, okay? And so this is nothing new in agriculture, but our job with our 4,000 crop consultants and agronomists out there are to make sure that we're building solutions for our growers that help them adjust and react to any of these challenges in the marketplace. And at the end of the day, that we're creating an opportunity where they can maximize their return on investment.
Jeff Tarsi, Executive Vice President and President of Global Retail with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thanks for joining us today and filling us in on Investor Day.
Thank you as well, and we look forward to continuing to serve customers globally in the field of agriculture.
Greg Soulje is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Well, Greg's back now with his long-term outlook. And Greg, we've got 4th of July coming up next week. Is it going to be wet for some folks?
Yeah, it will be, but sometimes like these rains, matter of fact, most of the summertime, they're not of an all-day persuasion and duration, but Mother Nature is probably going to serve up some of her own pyrotechnics. Unfortunately, aimed at some of those wettest areas of the western Corn Belt locales onto the maps and charts here. First, a pretty quiet spell of weather into the northeastern part of the country. Note the developing tropical features late in the week. One maybe coming out of the Caribbean and southwestern Gulf. Another one maybe perhaps lowering pressures over the western Gulf of Mexico. That means some significant rainfall. But unfortunately, look at the plume of 1 to as much as 2 inches from the upper Midwest through the heart of Iowa into the eastern plains. The rains will be of benefit to Oklahoma and Texas, over the mid-Atlantic region as well, and not much to speak of over some of the driest areas of the eastern and southeastern Corn Belt. Maybe some scattered stuff into areas of the Pacific Northwest and High Plains areas, and some of those showers and thunderstorms will be scattered as well over the southwestern reaches of the country.
Temperatures, Greg, the week of July 8th. Do you see anybody with abnormally warm temperatures?
Oh, yes, that's the story, chasing these hot ridges around here a good part of the weekend. Here we go with the hot ridge and triple-digit readings centered on some of the wettest grounds. I can't believe probably what's going to be developing out there with weed, disease, and insect pressure, not to mention the flooded grounds of the western Corn Belt. Heat into the eastern section, stress and strain there as the dryness-related issues continue on. Speaking of which, no better than normal precip, but that's scattered at best. Eastern Corn Belt, the wetter pattern with tropical moisture into the western complex, back into the southern plains, some moisture from the Pacific Northwest, otherwise quiet in the northeast, the southwest, maybe some tropical business down through Florida.
As you get into the week of July 15th, Greg, do you see any shifts in the pattern, any changes in temperature?
We're just going to really oscillate that hot ridge back and forth, eastward movement, retrograde it back to the west. This time we build it north and eastward up towards the St. Lawrence. Triple-digit readings will be common for parts of the Corn Belt at large. Some cooling in the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures a few degrees above average across the rest of the country, where this is a little more at least bullish on rainfall, but bearish on the crop. Into the western Corn Belt areas, normal precip hopefully gets things in a better frame of mind in the eastern areas. And don't forget pollination and tasseling. It'll be a wide range of calendar dates this year, and that heat's included. Tropical weather for the Rio Grande, offshore Florida, moisture for the Pacific Northwest.
All right, Greg, take us through the end of July. What do you see to wrap up the month temperature-wise?
Not much of a change, a little westward movement again of the hot ridge, a little farther northward movement into areas of the Dakotas, the upper Midwest, a little push of some cooler air into parts of the Northeast of New England. And if you see the pattern here, you know we're just really oscillating back and forth the hot ridge all summertime season. We do see signs of a protracted drier spell materializing over the eastern Corn Belt, maybe some degradation of crop quality there. And again, tasseling, pollination, replanting, where are we at here? Variability that will redefine it this year across the Corn Belt. Normal precipitation across much of the Great Plains, Texas and Oklahoma, and the Southwest. Monsoon moisture there. The tropics are busy taking aim at Florida, and a busy weather pattern expected for parts of the Pacific Northwest.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. Folks, Farm Progress editors don't just live in town and look out at the world of agriculture. They actually live in it. Holly Spangler serves as the editor for the Prairie Farmer magazine. And Holly, you farm in western Illinois. Give us the update in your geography. How do things look?
Yeah, we got a needed rain here Tuesday evening that really helped a lot. I was out shooting pictures Tuesday of corn that was just rolled up like pineapples to the sky, and was in a group text actually with our editor in Indiana, Tom Beckman, and our editor Gil Gullickson in Iowa. And here we are talking about, massive flooding in Iowa and also corn rolling up in Illinois. So things are looking a lot better here after that rain.
That's good to hear. It is certainly a tale of several different cities out there in the world of crop conditions right now. Looking more broadly at Illinois, how do you feel that farmers are feeling about this season? I know you've been out on the road the past couple days.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of farmers in a lot of different places. Crop conditions are so widely varying. In Illinois, we're sitting pretty well in general. But there was a lot of replant. So we've got corn in all stages of growth. A lot of corn starting to tassel here, some still in the V4 range. So, just a lot of variation. But that rain that came over, a lot of different parts of the state really was kind of $1 million rain for some folks, and for others, kind of a Band-Aid on a wound that really needs stitches. But it'll get us by for a little while.
Absolutely. It'll carry it on for a few more weeks. Holly, you mentioned Tom Beckman, editor of the Indiana Farmer, keeping up to speed. What did you hear from him? How do things look in Indiana?
Yeah, absolutely. He was out in the field the other day, earlier this week, and, was observing that soybeans are now doing what they do best, right? In the heat, they are branching out. They're putting on more, more nodes, which will hopefully lead to more pods. So they may not be the tallest beans, right? But beans don't have to be tall to produce well, to yield well. They just need more nodes, and that leads to more pods to fill, and we just need August rains for that.
Need the August rains. That's so true. Finally, Gil Gullickson, Wallace's farmer. What was his report?
Yeah, Gil is watching the flooding in Iowa. He was out, in several places this week too, and sees, a lot of highly variable conditions there. Areas where corn looks fantastic, soybeans, and then other areas where it's, drowned out and showing some nitrogen deficiency in some places. And he noted, we're likely to see disease become a factor with some of that wet weather that they've been having.
That makes sense. Always things to watch for in every growing season. Holly Spangler, editor of Prairie Farmer, thanks so much for joining us this week.
You bet. Thanks so much.
We'll have more after this.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. It's something we've consistently noticed through the years. These summertime holidays, there are plenty of tractors and plenty of flags with them. We'll show you a unique display in Tennessee. In Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. Yeah, at the summertime events where you have the old tractors, you have flags on the drawbar, flags on the front end, flags on the sides. But look at this display, where Old Glory will be high over the countryside near Smyrna, Tennessee, not far from Nashville. Randy Woodward has this tremendous display involving two F-20 tractors. One farmall made in 1937, another one from 1939, and those poles to which you see Old Glory attached were made from scrap metal, with the exception of a few bolts, nuts, two pins, and two boat trailer hull rollers. Everything was scrap, 35.5-foot poles. It isn't easy to get those poles weighing 200 pounds aloft, but he did it for Flag Day, did it for Memorial Day. He's going to do it again for the 4th of July and for Veterans Day also. And Randy shared with me that when an 80-year-old veteran left a note on one of those tractors, it made it all worthwhile. You can see a couple of videos that he did on putting these together. It'll be on the Max Armstrong Tractor Stuff Facebook page in the week ahead. This guy will have a firecracker 4th of July, I'm sure. Here's Mark Stock with his weekly report from Big Iron.
Well, hello, Max. We want to wish everybody a very safe and happy 4th of July. We have seen a tremendous amount of late model equipment selling in the last couple weeks. This past Wednesday in Hamilton, Illinois, a 2023 John Deere 8RX 370 4-track tractor sold for $400,750. A 2021 Case IH Magnum 380 Road Track mechanical front tractor sells for $255,750. A 2023 John Deere S780 Combine with 200 separator hours sells on an estate sale for $376,500. A 2005 Case IH 2388 Axial Flow Combine with 1,750 separator hours sells for $81,250. 2023 John Deere 12-row 30 folding corn head with header trailer sells for $113,110. An unused 2024 John Deere 1795 24-row 20-inch planter sells for $270,000. A 2013 Kenworth T370 truck with a Rotomix feed box sells for $86,250. A 2022 XLR toy hauler travel trailer by Hastings, Nebraska sells for $35,500. Max, these are auction results from just the past 2 weeks. Auction results are all available on bigiron.com. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. This week, we're going to learn about the FFA in Kansas. Joining us is Cecilia Newby. She just wrapped up her term as the Kansas State FFA Secretary. And Cecilia, thanks for talking with us.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here with you all.
So you just wrapped up your term, you finished up your year of service, and what were some of the highlights of this last year for you as the Kansas State Secretary?
The biggest thing for me this past year was getting to travel across the state and meet the amazing members that we have and everything that's changing in FFA chapters across the state, whether it's members taking risks and trying new things in leadership, raising greenhouses and doing things like that. It's just amazing to see the innovative agriculture that we have in the state, and I'm super excited about the future that we have coming.
Innovative is a great word for what we see coming out of agriculture. Now, Cecilia, of course, you just wrapped up convention. How did it go this year? How was attendance this year in the Kansas State Convention?
It was absolutely amazing. The largest convention that we've had in the state of Kansas, having the issue of having too many people and not enough room, which is a great issue to have. And we were super excited to see so many young agriculturalists excited about this organization and excited about what FFA can do for them.
Now, you've had quite a career in FFA, Cecilia. What were some of the highlights for you?
Throughout my FFA career, I had some amazing advisors that pushed me to try new things and get outside my comfort zone. And that really translated into success for me, being the third high individual in ag sales as a junior in high school. That allowed me to learn that I love being around people and I love doing what I do. And then also being the runner-up in the National Veterinary Science Proficiency Award last year, just proving that with hard work and a little bit of determination, you can do anything that you set your mind to.
You can do anything you set your mind to. That is a great sentiment, Cecilia. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we wish you the best as your future moves forward.
Thank you.
Colby Egg Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Chad Colby joins us again for this week's tech segment, taking a look at the latest and greatest in the world of agriculture and what it could mean for your farm.
So, Greg, there's nothing better than some innovation, and a lot of times innovation takes time. Everybody, I think, have seen 360 Rain. Talk a little bit about current development and what you see right now.
Sure. So, I like to say that we've gotten to this point where this machine is ready to rock and roll. And we're out here in a cornfield today, and you can see, of course, running here behind me. And to me, it's all about what do you and I need to do to eliminate stress? How do you and I maximize this corn? We can't change Chicago Board of Trade price. I would love to have $6 corn. Reality is we're struggling to get to $5. But what if I could add and maximize this yield and take it to the top? And so you and I plant tremendous genetics. And so it's all about today eliminating stress. We've been, 90 plus degrees here for 7 days running. This corn's been under stress. I really like what we're doing here today. So what you see right here, I'm running 35 hundredths of an inch per acre. And I also happen to be putting on 40 units of nitrogen and ammonium sulfate with that. So this machine is taking itself and putting water right at the base of the plant. And it's a technology that takes us and lets us water from edge of field to edge of field. No longer my pivots where I got 28 to 32 acres in the corners that never sees water. Now I have the ability to go fence row to fence row.
There's a lot of developed technology that's also progressed, correct?
Well, it had to get to the point where you and I, with our iPhone, can manage every aspect of what's happening here. So I can change how fast the machine's moving, what we're doing for water, what we're doing for nitrogen. I got 3 cameras on this machine. Obviously, I can see corn. You can see exactly what's happening. So it's got to be simple and effective, but yet it's just flat out got to run day in and day out.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you so much, Chad. Always appreciate your updates from the world of technology. Folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness coming when we return. Well, flooding and heavy rains aren't the only challenges facing American crop growers this year. Heat, particularly in the South, has been a concern, and that's the topic of this week's Agronomy for Your Acres with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Joining us to bring us up to speed on this heat wave is Nolan Taylor. He's a crop consultant down in Cecilia, Kentucky. And Nolan, how are crops in Kentucky grappling with this hot weather?
Well, it really depends this year. We've had a lot longer than normal planting window. We have about a 75-day planting window for corn, which is normally about 45 days. So we have a lot of early corn that is getting ready to go into reproduction, and a lot of late corn is just setting nodal roots and just getting out of the ground.
As you look at that part of the growing stage where we are, Nolan, what are the risks when we see this kind of heat event on a growing crop?
Right. The reproductive stage is obviously the most critical part, because it's going to start putting that tassel out and setting that ear, and it's going to start putting all of its energy into that ear development. So it's very critical that it doesn't have any stress whatsoever. It needs all the nutrients and all the water it can get, and so it's very critical. With those late planted corn plants, they're just trying to get their roots set, so they need to be able to get plenty of nutrients and get the root depth so that they can set up for the rest of the season.
Absolutely, Nolan. Now, when we get this kind of a heat event on our crops, we can't just go out and give them lemonade. What do you recommend as a way for farmers to moderate or mitigate some of this crop stress?
So the first thing I would recommend would be to contact your local crop consultant, have them come out, walk some fields, examine how your crop is looking, And I would recommend taking tissue samples. That lets us have a snapshot in time of where that plant is as far as nutrient uptake and what it might be lacking in nutrients. And at that point, after about a 48-hour turnaround, we can get those results back and really have a good idea of what kind of products we can put on the crop to get it back up to optimal potential.
Well, Nolan, I know you are out there in the field right now. I'm sure you've been doing these kind of tests. Are there some products that have jumped out to you as being effective in this environment?
Absolutely. We've got with Loveland products, we've got a whole host of products that we can put on the crop. After we get the tissue samples back, we can examine them and see if there's one specific nutrient that is lacking, and we can focus on that nutrient. Or if it's just lacking in a few different ones, we have a great product called NutriSync Complete 3D that we can put on, and it kind of gives it a booster. It's a whole host of micronutrients to get it going and get it replenished.
Lots of options out there, even in a challenging growing season like this one. Noah Taylor, crop consultant with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thanks so much for joining us this week and sharing your insight on agronomy for your acres.
Thank you.
You can learn more about their offerings by visiting nutrienagsolutions.com. And folks, I want to be sure to wish all of you a very happy Independence Day next week. We'll be back after the holiday covering all the issues that matter to agriculture, markets, policy, and everything else. But until then, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.